All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for a discussion on accelerating data-driven brand strategies. Please note today's webinar recording will be made available on the Vogue Business website following the panel. We will also be hosting a short Q&A at the end of the discussion, so please send in your questions and we'll answer as many as possible. My name is Hillary Milnes, and I am the Americas editor at Vogue Business. Joining me today is Andreas Antrup, SVP of Advertising at Zalando and Managing Director of Zalando Marketing Services, Zalando's 360-degree marketing unit. Also joining us is Michele Pilati, Head of Digital Transformation at Karl Lagerfeld. Welcome both, and thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Emily. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
Pleasure to join you.
Great. So today we're going to be discussing 2020 and everything that happened this year. Obviously, it's been an unusual luxury retail year. We're going to establish the biggest digital opportunities and strategies that best served customers during the pandemic, as well as the challenges that brands faced as they quickly responded to store closures and changing customer behavior. With the shift to online comes more customer data, and so we'll be discussing how brands can best use that data to inform personalized marketing messages and e-commerce experiences, and how not to get bogged down by that amount of information. And finally, we want to know how what behaviors and strategies are going to become part of the permanent brand and retailer playbook based on what our leaders here at Zalando and Karl Lagerfeld are seeing in terms of adoption. So to get an idea of how online sales have surged this year, take the US for an example. According to US Census Bureau data from November, third quarter 2020 e-commerce sales rose 37% compared to the same period last year, which is indicative of the larger global shift to shopping online. And according to a 2020 report from Zalando Marketing Services, fashion brands are seeing digital sales share increase. So what are the implications of that? Brands are needing to respond to higher customer expectations of online experiences. Digital experiences are affecting customer loyalty and retention, and bringing personalization and tools like virtual clienteling to the forefront. The biggest takeaway, I think, is that the more digitally advanced your brand is, the better position you are in to succeed in 2021 and onward. So of course, this impacts how luxury fashion companies are operating and need to operate. Zalando Marketing Services asked brands to share what areas of businesses were most impacted by digitalization. As you can see, the number one response was sales and distribution for all the reasons that we mentioned earlier, as well as marketing and the overall organizational structure. So I think, in reality, there's not one corner of luxury brands and fashion brands today that are not being influenced by digital. So let's turn to our panelists and dive in. So Andreas, can you walk us through, Zalando is obviously a digitally native marketplace, but tell us a bit about your strategy when it comes to data personalization, and did the pandemic change anything that you were doing this year?
Well, in short, it didn't change so much the trajectory, but it accelerated it a lot. So for sure, we had a lot of adaptation to do in terms of how the logistics was run during lockdown and with a lot of precaution to keep our colleagues safe. But then, according to, in terms of the onboarding of new customers, in terms of deepening customer relationships on the way towards being the starting point for fashion, and in particular in terms of accelerating the platform shift towards becoming a marketplace for our partners, that has really, dialed up in speed, and this is the real effect we've been able to see in this year.
Right, and really excited to hear your perspective coming from the retail, online retailer side, and also the brands that you worked with, one of which, of course, being Karl Lagerfeld. So Michele, if you could tell us your role, tell us a bit about your role at Karl Lagerfeld. What does the head of digital transformation do? And it seems like the keyword there is transformation.
Yeah, correct. The head of digital transformation is really someone obsessed by finding the best way to digitally connect with consumers. And this is a process that really involves the whole organization. So it's not only about the commerce team, it's not only about the marketplace, it's not only about marketing, but I think it's all those things coming together in a solid and efficient digital transformation journey.
Right, and so how did the pandemic push Karl Lagerfeld, the brand, to invest more in digital? Was there, how did you accelerate plans that might have been already in the works? What did this year look like in particular?
Well, Karl Lagerfeld, digital is not new for Karl Lagerfeld. In 2012, Karl Lagerfeld brand launched exclusively online with netaporter.com, and weeks later on karl.com. So digital has always been key to Karl Lagerfeld strategy, and it's still a central part of the brand DNA. Of course, this year and the pandemic has created conditions that accelerated processes that were planned to only happen in the future. So let's say that digital became the natural solution to engage and to serve our consumers, which today it means to connect with them where it really matters. So reading through their needs and being capable to really provide what they're looking for, whether it is a product or a content or simply an experience with the brand.
Great. And I'm interested to hear, has customer behavior changed this year? With people spending more time online, has that influenced the way that they, discover new brands, if that's on Zalando, or interact with an existing brand like Karl Lagerfeld? Andreas, if you'd like to start, anything about customer behavior this year that particularly stood out to you?
Right. So you showed the graph of the uptake in e-commerce sales, and we've seen this at Zalando both in terms of new customer onboarding in particular segments of the population, in particular in the, let me say, older, but also in the younger generations that were less prone to e-commerce so far, in greater numbers. But even more pronounced, we see that engagement has gone up. We see that people are increasingly using commerce platforms to inform themselves, to also, to some degree, kill time during the lockdown. And this has led to browsing and, just discovery, consumption to go up. So we see a lot more broader interaction with the assortment than before. I would also like to mention that, in this year, it is a very special emotional state also for customers, all of us. The way that brands connect with the customer has changed, and in that sense, consumer behavior and the interaction form has also been impacted in the sense that as brands, and also as as an agency that supports brands, the showing empathy, being part of the solution and more immediate part of the solution is something that has been brought a lot more to the fore, and has highlighted again the need for brands to be very clear in terms of who they are and how and what kind of role they want to play in people's lives in a broader sense.
Absolutely. And Michaela, at Karl Lagerfeld, is that what you've experienced? Tell us a bit about how that customer changed, whether they're coming to the brand through a partner like Zalando or coming to the direct site.
Yeah, to Andreas' point, I think the key point here was really to in such a particular year was to find a way to connect with our consumers. So we ensure immediately to enable all the channels which could allow us to stay really close to them. So as a brand, of course, we decided to go straight forward with our social channels, launching something personal, Stay at Home with Karl series. But then in parallel, we worked hard to optimize the digital experience across all the channels to ensure that we could really meet consumers' expectations in such a critical moment. And to do that successfully today, you can not only rely on your e-com, but you must ensure that consumers will get the experience they expect when searching for your brand on a multi-brand environment. And then when you move on a multi-brand environment, you have to work closely with the platform you work with in order to get the insights you need to connect with your consumers. Of course, you connect with your consumers, you know how to behave when they are on your e-com, but then when they are in a multi-brand environment, you really need to work closely with the platform to get all the insights you need to really connect with them. And every time we run a campaign with Zalando, and as we did this year, we know exactly who are we talking to and how to engage with them.
Mm-hmm. And how do you make the online experience feel as high touch as it might feel if a customer walks into a store? Andreas, I'm sure this is something that Zalando has been perfecting for years as an online platform. How do you make people feel special when they shop online?
Yeah, let me first say, Zalando is on the way to becoming the starting point for fashion in a wide sense, and design is a very integral part of that. And for sure, there are some, let me say, basics you have to get right. So it's, you have to be a very distinctive presence. In Europe has to be very clean presence from a UX point of view. And you also need to be clear about how you bring this multi-brand environment, different brands together in outfits, in collections, and so on. You also have to be very mindful of the imagery you use and you employ. But what is really the key is to bring the joint work with our partners to life. Because in the end, as a commerce platform, it's a sort of a stage, and the real players, what people, what draws the crowds, that's our partners with their content, with their assortment. And here we are working very, very closely on how they can bring their product, their brand to life in what we call brand homes, but also on the product detail pages, and of course through all the campaigning with which we are reaching out to the customer on Zalando and beyond.
I think the marketing side of it is just as important as the e-commerce experience, because you have to bring people in. And I want to talk about that a bit more. Before I do, Michaela, did you want to add anything on just, what really defines the online experience, and how do you make sure that, as you were mentioning, that the, if you're a customer who's meeting the brand online, it's going to be, just feel as much of a high-end experience?
Sure. It's key to really build perfect and data-driven digital consumer experience when you think to really build an e-commerce experience. Depending on the channel, we obsess the product assortment, the brand tone of voice, the contents, which are locally relevant most of the case, with the vision to bring all our digital channels together in a premium and branded consumer experience. Of course, you can play with data and with information regarding consumers you want to engage with, depending on the channel you are operating. And that's the key. As Andreas said, and Zalando recently launched the brand home, which is something that we definitely want to immediately join next year, which is really a space for a brand to connect with brands consumers in Zalando environment. So you really create a mirroring of your e-commerce within Zalando to be able to host the needs of Zalando consumers, which are in love with the Karl Lagerfeld brand. So it's really creating this long tail of branding across channels.
Great. And to talk about data strategy, which is of course at the center of any digital strategy, Andreas, can you tell us a bit about the role that data plays and has played for Zalando over the years? I'm sure it amounts to personalization, just getting to know the customer as they spend more time on the site. But how would you describe it?
Data is at the core of many of our processes, at many of our approaches, and there are just data science and machine learning teams all across the company. Many people working on these things, ranging from things like fraud detection, algorithmic pricing and discounting, and this looming very large personalization. So really tailoring the experience that the customer gets, both in terms of things like a CRM, but also what kind of experience you get when you open the app, what kind of experience you get when you search and browse. All of these things can be very much tailored to the needs of the customer. To give one example, sizing looms large in fashion, and by now the majority of purchases are done based on recommendations of the right size. And if you just think through, to be browsing, assortment of thousands of SKUs, knowing that whatever I look at, my size is available, that is pre-filtered. It alleviates a lot of frustration on the customer side, and this is one of the key things we think going forward will help. And of course, we leverage data also for our partners. So Michele mentioned the data infusion in the strategies they have, and we see this, that partners that leverage data well are more successful. And so through the tooling that we provide through Zalando Marketing Services Insights, we really help brands to assess opportunities and to design strategies of how to open up new markets, new customer segments, new assortment segments. To give a bit of a flavor here, imagine you can check out of your key styles, which key cities are they selling best, and what kind of market share do they have in different key cities across Europe. So are you strong in Milan? Are you weak in Paris? Are you strong in Berlin or in London? Who are the customer segments? What age group are they? What kind of fashion view do they have? All these things. And what is nice to see, it's not only about the transactional data. You can also get a feel what is wish listed. So what is really aspirational versus what is perhaps flashy, so people can check you, but then they move on, they bounce off your product detail page. All these things give you a very clear and very fast feedback on how your assortment and also how your marketing is reacting and is being perceived by the customer, and then you can react accordingly quickly and adapt to the needs of the customer and to pivot towards the core of your brand.
Yeah, that's super critical, I think, for brands today. And Michele, is there a new approach to data strategy that Karl Lagerfeld has taken this year? How do you make sure that as a brand you are taking in the right amount of information and also the most important information, and not letting that data overwhelm?
The importance of data to run successful digital marketing campaign and effective e-com execution, it's crystal clear, as Andreas mentioned. Of course, I think that the real challenge for many organizations today, looking at the amount of data that are available, is really to be able to read through the data and to adapt on time in terms of actions and strategies. So most of the time, this is at least is what is happening, working together with a super strong team that can really help you reading through the data and drive you to execute successful marketing campaign really helps, even more than running direct to consumers campaign on your e-com, because the amount of data that some companies are able to generate in the industry today, it's really impressive and can really segment the consumer base they might be in contact with and help your brand to really impact that consumer that you are really looking into engage with. Yeah. So data are the base for successful marketing campaign, but I would say really important and key point is how the company is able to read through the data and to use the data available.
Absolutely. In terms of how to best resonate with customers, particularly in a different year for fashion retail, Andreas, how has data informed Zalando in terms of what's performing? I'm sure people's not just their shopping behavior, but what they've actually wanted to purchase has changed a lot. How has Zalando been able to react to that, and then also share what's performing with brand, as you were mentioning earlier?
There are two ways of using data. One is on a very granular level, system-wise, one-to-one personalization, these kind of things. And the other one is on an aggregate level, insights that informs human decision-making. And what we've learned this year is that on the insights level, we can really speed up and make our decision-making more accurate. To give one example, many campaigns have lead times of something like half a year, 6 months. And we were forced this year, both with many partners, but also within Zalando, to speed up these cycles to something like 6 weeks oftentimes, under different production constraints, under very different consumer sentiment and different messaging. And the ability to stay close to the consumer through insights, be it what kind of memes are popping up that people share online, but also listening and checking very closely where shopping trends are moving even before they actually materialize. That really helps to get the shift in this high-paced steering right. And if you look across the globe, there are places in the world that are already in a very high-paced marketing environment, and to some degree we've been protected in Europe. And I think Corona and 2020 may have been the year where we also learn to be successful as marketers in the fashion industry at large, also in a faster paced environment. And this, I think, will stay with us, and it is to very large degree enabled by the intelligent use of data insights.
That's interesting. So you're saying that this year kind of encouraged marketers to almost improve their work and step up their game a bit. Can you elaborate on that in terms of how that has, why this year particularly kind of has pushed fashion marketing forward?
So to comment on speed, there's when everyone is looking at the same thing in the news, then there's sort of a more limited set of messages that make sense. And the earlier you discover what is really on people's minds and how you can be part of the solution in their daily life, be it in terms of exercising at home, or be it about how to maintain mental health, be it about how to bring a bit of sparkle, joy to your life, where they say this take out the trash, dressed up kind of thing. All these things are very quickly emerging, and the faster you can capitalize on these, and the faster you can be part of them, the better the more connected you will be to the customer. And this is to a very large degree enabled by the insights flow that you get from interacting with our customers, and also from latching on very closely to the platforms that you work with. So if I look across the spectrum of partners that work with Zalando, the successful ones, they're all working very closely with the Insights tool. They have custom dashboards, they have retainer models for deep dives, and they are very deliberate in how they design and execute their campaigns specifically for different market segments, given the environments that people are in. And I think that is something that's going to stick with us going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Michaela, I'm interested to hear, how in your role are you working with people more on the marketing side? How does that digital data focus intersect with the Karl Lagerfeld brand's marketing messages? How often you're communicating with customers? It seems like, the faster you can read what customers are reacting to, the better positioned you'll be.
Absolutely. It's about keep the engagement with your customers, and I think the engagement really starts with content generation, which is something that we really, especially this year, we really put a big focus on creating authentic and fresh contents, and being able really to drive the communication to our consumers through those authentic content. So consumer today, they can absorb and digest thousands of different contents every day, and a brand must play with fresh contents and carefully selected depending on the consumers they are talking with, and depending on the channels they are playing with those content. So content generation, I think, is crucial, and also selecting which contents to address to which channels to engage with, which consumers we want to be connected with. And secondly, thanks to the data and thanks to the marketing actions that we can put in place with our direct to consumers channels, and also with the platforms and marketplace we work with, it's personalization. To show consumers that we know who they are, we care about them, because we are showing to them exactly what they expect to find. Because we care, and because we know which is their style, what they are looking for, when is their birthday. So knowing the consumer thanks to data to personalize a service which goes across your own e-com and across the platforms you work with, and building a timeline and a blueprint of content generation and personalization on the other side makes a perfect marketing plan.
Yeah, which brings to mind, in our coverage, we've seen that a lot of online retailers are seeing a surge in new customers because, just how much the online shopping volume has increased, how many people might be shopping, a luxury brand for the first time. So how do you deliver a strong experience to the new customers that are coming in that you'll likely know less about, as well as continuing to engage loyal customers? Andres, did you want to take that one first?
Sure. So, you know, when you get new customers on board, it makes sense to onboard them. So you ask them, you introduce them to your services, to your partners, to your assortment, and you know, this very explicit onboarding experience that at Zalando at least has helped us to very quickly provide a tailored experience to the new customer. And this we take as one of the key drivers for fast deepening and retention of customers. I would like to say two things. One, yes, tailoring is about you know, let me say, meeting expectations, but it is also about inspiration. Fashion is a lot about inspiration. So you need to have a bit of sparkle of the unexpected, of, you know, the discovering something new, something that you would not have searched for. And of course, you know, it's not about something random, something that fits with your preferences, but it's still, you know, outside of the bubble perhaps that you are explicitly yourself searching for. I would also like to comment on, or to draw on rather, on a finding of the mentioned study that we ran with our partners at ZMS, which found that the digitally forward partners, they put a lot of effort or emphasis on 360-degree campaigns, meaning campaigns that are ranging from, you know, the awareness consideration down to the performance sell-out driving space. And what we see here is that by leveraging data, by leveraging commerce platforms like Zalando, brands can bridge from reaching out and getting into the know of new customers down to the funnel of seeing them converting. So the, you know, this very strict silo between branding and performance that we are used to in an offline world, that is somewhat crumbling. And you see, with many partners, we are talking about essentially media channel characteristics of a place like Zalando, the app, where you can in particular this mid-funnel engagement consideration really work to sharpen your brand and to acquire new customers. So it and I think that also, if I look at the discussions, if having a look at how partners are behaving, that is something that's going to be a lot more in the coming years when I compare it to the trajectory that we had been on before.
And I think you raised a really important point, which is that as critical as data is, it's still fashion. You still have to have that really interesting point of view and that bit of magic as being part of it. So Michaela, how does that play into your role? You know, how much of it is very science-driven, data-driven, and where does that element of curation, really just brand, come in to as well?
Well, back to the point of acquisition, I think that what Andreas mentioned was really relevant, because when we talk about 360 approach to a marketing campaign based on data, it really creates the opportunity for a brand to play in a multi-brand space and across the whole level of the funnel. So really, thanks to the awareness part of the campaign, you can really engage with new consumers within the Zalando environment, 35 million of consumers, and attract what you really want, what the consumer that you really want to engage with your campaign. And this is based on data. So they are looking to your images, they are looking to your campaign because you want to show them what you prepare for them. And then going through the funnel, when you really get to the more performance part of the campaign, there are tools that really enable you to show the single product, to drive the attention from the concept of the campaign until the single product down to the product landing page, which probably is the last step before purchasing. So this is really using data to go across the whole step of the funnel and engaging with consumers and also acquiring new consumers, because acquiring new consumers on digital channels which are not your own e-com, it might not be a direct acquisition exercise, as I mentioned, but it happened to me several times as a consumer to discover a new brand on a platform and check for the brand online store afterwards, subscribing to the newsletter, and then start engaging with the brand, which is exactly what we think it's happening, working closely to Zalando and then using the level of engagement that we can create thanks to the tool on Zalando, then to bring also traffic on our own e-com, and then to start engaging with the customer relation management with the consumers that we are acquiring thanks to this partnership we are having with the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds, just as important as this brand retailer partnership, hearing a lot of words like 360 degrees, how important is it that within an organization that everyone's working together? Talk a bit about what this all means in terms of how internal teams need to work together, how that has accelerated this year, and almost, are we kind of redefining what the internal makeup of fashion retailers and brands look like? Andreas, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, you hit upon a very important point, which is that in digital, cross-functional collaboration is a lot more important than in other areas. And we see also in the study that people respond, digitization has brought them a new view of how they should organize themselves. I'm not so sure we can already say what the winning organizational model of fashion brands and fashion players in the future is going to be. But what we do see is a couple of good contenders. We see the contender of very strong account teams. So some of our partners run fairly large and sophisticated account teams that work on Zalando end to end, from marketing, assortment, logistics, all the way through. And the second one that I think is also a strong contender is that in many places you have sort of virtual teams, or let me say fora, where the different units and functions can come together and align on the way forward on the digital business. And I think it's this breaking down of the silos, so to speak, that we are witnessing. And we can also draw back again to data, because to some degree, the lubricant between the silos is data. By facilitating a common knowledge and a common language on the customer, and by making insights, being able to hop from one silo to another, so that essentially you can draw things together, from logistics to product onto pricing and marketing, to provide an integrated offer and proposition towards the customer. And that is, I think, if you are able to orchestrate and master these things in conjunction, then you're playing proper 4P marketing towards your target customer segment. And I can only say, if you're contemplating as a player in fashion to move in this direction, we are here to help at Zalando, to essentially, help you to orchestrate across with the services that we are offering across logistics, marketing, and assortment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michele, how about at Karl Lagerfeld? How are teams working together? And, I think Andreas made a lot of good points about how data is kind of this common thread. How is that playing out at your brand?
Well, yeah, I think it's really interesting what we are witnessing this year. And also it's part of my previous experience in different company I've worked for. And how really managing digital business have shift from an account driven and sales driven approach into a more of a virtual team approach based on data and based on consumer insight. So as I said at the beginning of this session, the business should plan an efficient digital transformation, which involves the whole organization. So all the different departments, from sales to marketing, including IT, operation, products, communication, will have to start thinking digital first and working together based on concrete data and concrete insight. And this process, I think, should be led by strong digital leaders, working closely to the different functions.
Absolutely. And I want to make sure we have some time for audience questions. But just to wrap up, Andreas, do you see these changes that we've seen this year sticking around as we move forward? I think in many ways, the pandemic has been a catalyst for a lot of fashion, retail, and brand strategies. What do you see being some long-lasting strategies from this year?
Yeah, not a trace of doubt, Hilary. First off, I've been in the industry for 9 years. And we've always seen when new customers onboard to e-commerce to multi-brand platforms, they tend to stick. So they discover that actually they love the experience. And I don't think I'd rather think the customers that have tried e-commerce for first time this year are no different. Second, Michele, I think, mentioned earlier that a lot of the initiatives he was, planning for the years to come have been brought forward this year. That we see across the board, and those initiatives will come to fruition, and they will essentially just accelerate the path that we as an industry overall are on towards a digital first mindset and setup. And in the slides you showed in the beginning, we had the striking 57% digital market share that brands in our study show they expect by the time, I think, 2023-24. So the inflection point where digital has the greatest share is not far, and you better want to be prepared for that future.
Absolutely. And Michele, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I think the changes that we've seen this year are here to stay. And let me give you an example. I'm Italian, and Italy has the lowest e-com penetration in Europe. And this year it went up of about 26%, which means two things. One, that the pandemic probably unlocked most of the frictions of consumers, Italian consumers, to buy online, and that the brands and the marketplaces became extremely good in selling online. So those two elements combined together, they brought the e-com penetration to the next level, and they changed completely the mindset of the consumers. And now, because we are walking through a learning curve, we reached a stage that we will never go down again. So the changes are here to stay, probably, and hopefully retail will pick up again, but then the consumers of the future will always have the luxury to choose between retail and digital with a different digital mindset.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you both so much for the panel discussion. I've pulled together a few highlights. I think the more you know your customer, the more you're responding to their changing behavior directly, the better positioned you'll be. Digital strategies require a cross-functional team. You need to work together to move quickly. And as we've expressed a few times, things are moving a lot faster when it comes to digital, and you have to bring down the silos to really work together effectively. And finally, these changes are here to stay, as we've just mentioned. Customer expectations and online shopping habits aren't going to regress, even as stores pick up and people are returning to shopping in person. So as Andreas mentioned, the better digitally savvy you are, the better prepared you'll be for the future. So that is the key takeaways. And I do want to open it up to Q&A because we've had a few great audience questions come in. So what do you say are the biggest risks facing brands as they work to be more responsive to accelerating trends, which I think, kind of calls back on the discussion we had about science versus magic when it comes to being a fashion brand? You still have to have your own point of view, but things like digital customer expectations, discovery, consumption, and brand value and connection. Are there any risks involved to responding quickly to customers? Andreas, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, let me not talk about risk per se, but rather about how to mitigate risk. One thing stands out very clearly. If you're very clear and you know who you are as a brand, then it's also much easier to take a stand. It's much easier to react quickly, and I think this is key. So if you have a very clear identity as a brand, then you can act quickly. You can be bold, and therefore you can capitalize on this more fast-paced environment where as brands are increasingly drawn into also taking societal stands. You can signal and you can be part of the solution, and there I think the opportunity outweighs the risk. But in order to be able to get into that opportunity, you have to be very clear about who you are.
Great. Michele, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think here consistency is the right word. So as much as a brand, as is able to be consistent with the vision and the contents and the product and the way I connect with consumers, the opportunities are definitely more than the risk in this sense.
Great. And Andreas, one for Zalando, how do you recruit brand partners, particularly through the connected retail strategy, which I don't think we've mentioned by name, but I'm sure you've been talking about this entire time. How do you recruit those partners, then also create a joint plan?
Right. So as a quick recap, so connected retail is an initiative of ours of connecting with physical brick and mortar stores and to enable them to reach customers also through online channels, which of course during lockdowns in particular proved to be a very important part of the solution for the industry overall. And we've seen an amazing uptick and response from the industry this year. And we expect to build on this going forward very much. It's a clear triple win for the partners, for the customer, and incidentally also for Zalando. It is a very classical approach. We reach out to potential partners. We have partners coming to us who want to engage, and more often than not, we come together and we find the right mode of interaction and the right way to onboard them onto this exhilarating journey.
Mm-hmm. Great. And are there any digital, so physical and digital hybrid projects that you're planning for the online and offline experiences?
I think not ready to be shared. So we focus on getting what works right, and what works is the shipping towards customers through the experience that they have digitally.
Great. Wonderful. I think we're just about out of time, but I wanted to thank our panelists for being here so much today. I really appreciate the time, Michele and Andreas.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. This is great. And thank you to our viewers. As a reminder, this webinar will be available on the Vogue Business website after we wrap up. And if you have any follow-up questions, please email ask@voguebusiness.com. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao.